What's up, guys? Welcome to the Imperfect Swing Golf Podcast. This week we have a rising star in the local game here in South Africa, and I'll leave it up to Dylan just to give us a quick overview of who he is.
How's it going, guys? How's it, Shannon? Thanks for having me on. I am 23 years old. My name is Dylan Naidoo. I'm on the Sunshine Tour. I recently came back from playing on the Mackenzie Tour, now the Form Tour in the US. I have been a professional golfer for the last 2 years, just over 2 years. Before that, having gone to college in the US, played at the University of Arkansas. I played for South Africa, junior golf and amateur golf, and then went over. And yeah, it's been a fun ride that golf has taken me on so far, and looking forward to the progress going forward.
And you mentioned you've been a pro for 2 years now. There's a big transition when you make that move from amateur to professional. Um, what would you say were some of the challenges you prepared yourself mentally? When you were still an amateur and you were thinking, this is what I'm going to have to do, and versus the reality now of actually being a pro and the challenges you currently face.
So I think it's you can look at it in two different ways, right? So there's the performance standpoint, the golfing performance standpoint, and what that looks like. And what I had always done as an amateur was prepare myself for professional golf even while I was playing amateur golf. That was always the goal. That was always what I wanted to achieve. So I feel like my process kind of got the progress got sped up exponentially when you do actually turn pro, because it's not just this thought in your head. It's now actually time to perform, and you can't just go, oh, when I'm a professional, this will all kind of sort itself out. No, it actually needs to sort itself out. And, so that's been, I think, probably the best thing for my golf game was to turn pro, which you hear people say and you go, yeah, okay, you don't really know what's happening. But honestly, that need to perform right now, the solutions that you think of will impact you for longer than if you just have years and years to progress. So that's been quite interesting. And then you get the financial and lifestyle realities of what professional golf looks like. I'm quite fortunate. I'm well off enough to be able to travel decently, to be able to have food that I need on the golf course, to be able to stay in the hotels that I need to while I'm on the road. But you see a different reality for different guys on tour. And yeah, it's been interesting. You learn how much travel you can do at one time. Once I get to about 5-6 weeks, it starts to burn me out a little. But yeah, it's fun to learn about yourself and learn about what works for you best, how you can improve that aspect of it, your lifestyle, your fitness, your sleeping, all that type of stuff is a very big part of professional golf.
And yeah, I think you mentioned, financial aspect. I think that's everything. That's kind of the main key. I mean, everyone can play golf at that level. I think it's fair to say that if you go and tee it up with a pro in a social round, you'll probably shoot 4 or 5 under quite easily. And then you look at the change in the pressure going from a social round with mates to playing for your livelihood now, because this is your job. Like you mentioned, once you make that change, it's all about now. There's no, okay, I'm going to play this round and I'm going to go hit balls for 4 hours on the range. This is like, you got to play well for the next 2 rounds if you want to get a check. And I think it's interesting, the financial, how comfortable you are financially plays on that first 2 rounds of golf. And I mean, even when we played amateur around about the same time, I found myself thinking, you're playing around at, for instance, we played Northwest at Lost City, and I don't know if you remember how long those 2 rounds were. Initially, it was like a 7 hour, 7 hour rounds, and I teed off last on the first day, and I only played 13 holes, and we actually planned, me and my pops, that we would just drive back, to Pretoria, Joburg. We'd stay somewhere there, and then just drive back the next day. But you get told, oh no, play. Obviously, we only finished 14 holes, and you got to resume at like 6:45 or something, and you're like, oh, now
Mm.
we in a bit of a pickle here, and
Mm.
the Sun International wants to charge you like three grand for a night, and I was just like, no, we can. I'm sure we can sleep in, just doze off in the car and like just have a shower in shower in the morning. So I mean, like those are the things that were playing on my mind as an amateur, just because I'm thinking, oh,
Mm.
let's save the parents a bit of cash here, because I mean,
Mm.
so going into that level now where it's your livelihood on the line, how much of a role do you think that plays with professional golfers?
I went through a stage when I'd come back from the US and I was still an amateur, just getting ready to turn professional, and the first few months when I had turned pro, of really, really worrying about money. I'm not making enough. I can't support myself. When am I going to be able to support myself? Do I need to do something else, like as a side hustle, to
Yeah.
make some money to support myself? And I was going around in circles in my head about this. And eventually I just spoke to my dad and I was like, hey, like I'm really worried about this. Like, I'm really thinking about my own financial security. And he said, hey, you need to realize that you're not going to be financially secure for a little while. Like, you aren't going to make enough money. That's
Yeah.
just the simple fact about it. And, I'm really lucky to have parents who are able to financially support me through my first year on tour. And say, hey, you need to stop worrying about that and go play some golf. And there's not a lot of people who have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's I fully understand. Well, I don't fully understand because there are other guys who have far less than me who try to do this. But I have some idea of what it's like to worry about it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I was fortunate enough to have parents who were able to tell me, you don't need to worry about it. We've got your back, and we're going to take care of you.
Yeah, and I think it's a weird one, because coupled with traveling expenses and the reality of being on tour, there comes the other challenge of sponsors that help you along that journey. Whether it being when you're an amateur, you can get away with playing with second-hand Pro V1s that are good condition. Like you can get away with it. It's not a biggie. But when you're at, like, again, comes back to playing for your check at the end of the month or the week in this case. You want to have everything as kind of precise and to the predictability of being brand new as possible. So whether it be balls, clubs, stuff along those lines, how difficult has it been for you? You're only 2 years in the game, but have you picked up any of those sponsors that have helped you in that sense? And is there a challenge for players who don't have that connection?
Absolutely. I think what good equipment gives you is clarity. You know that what you've got is going to perform at the level that you need to perform at. You don't have to second guess and say, well, maybe I need to do this, maybe I need to change that. Obviously there's situations where things are not fitted properly, but they are brand new.
Yeah.
And that's probably just as bad as having something that's a little older that actually is fitted properly.
Exactly.
And yeah, I've been fortunate. Titleist has taken me on board from a ball, cap, and glove perspective. Not cap anymore, but ball, glove, and shoe perspective. And yeah, I think one of the things that I was expecting was having finished in the top 50 was that there would be more potential equipment sponsors out there who would reach out to me. But what I've found is that you need to reach out to them. There is no one who is going to reach out to you unless you are winning consistently on the Sunshine Tour and are in the top 10, getting all the TV coverage in the world and co-sanctions. Then it's a different story. But yeah, I think what I've done is, because I have this financial peace of mind, I've been able to say, okay, let me go to the cool clubs, for example, and test out whatever equipment needs to be tested out and see what's going to work best for me, and taking that as a little bit of a freedom more than a hindrance, that I'm not bogged down by one equipment sponsor, and I can test out things and see what works best for me. So yeah, it's interesting, and I've been able to take the positives out of that more than anything.
And moving into to professional golf, there's no way around it. In a sense, in the men's game, and well, when you look in golf as a whole, there's this movement towards inclusive and equality in the game. So from the women's perspective, it's how do we get women's prize money and coverage to the same level as men's, and it's not to say one is better than the other, but just equal opportunity. And then we find ourselves within that, striving for equality. We find the diversity discussion as well. So, what is your take currently? Golf. I mean, I've been in the game for probably not as long as you have been. It's probably been about over 10, maybe about 14 years or so. What's your take on golf as a sport? At the moment, and have you seen a big shift from when you got into the game till now?
So I think what's been really interesting over the last few years is that drive towards women in golf, and understanding how difficult it is to make it in women's golf. If you're not in the top 50, 100 in the world, you don't have a livelihood in this game, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
that's not fair. It's not fair to only have such a small percentage of women earning enough to have a livelihood. There are women on the LPGA who aren't earning enough money to have a livelihood. Fortunately, they have more sponsors and bigger TV coverage, so that makes up for it a little bit. But in this country, the sad reality is there's just not enough money involved in women's golf to create anything. And I know a lot of the people behind the scenes on the Lady Sunshine Tour were really pushing and really making an effort. And it's awesome to see how far it's come in the last few years. There's still a long way to go in women's golf, but it's good to see that there are opportunities now I believe the winner or the top five finishers in the Cape Town Open or SA Open got a spot in the US Open.
Yeah. Yeah. SA Open. Yeah.
And SA Open, yeah, and that's how you create real visibility for South African women's golf. Is you have the winner of a local tournament end up there. That's going to attract more Europeans, more international players to come play in our events. And that's kind of a lead on to inclusion and diversity within the men's game too. It's been There's been some really good programs in place in the men's game, from the youth setup all the way through to professional golf. And I think it's really difficult to start from a perspective that only this small group of players of color on the Sunshine Tour. There needs to be a guy who becomes top 10 in the world, plays on the PGA Tour. The depth is just not quite there yet.
Yeah.
In terms of professional golf. And so then you need to say, okay, well, why is that? Why do we not have that depth within the players of color on the Sunshine Tour? One of the things, you can go all the way back to grassroots level with this. In golf in general, it's not only in South Africa that you have these boundaries to access. It's not that easy to have golf clubs, have golf balls, have a golf course to practice on. It's very different from soccer or athletics, where you can actually reach a reasonably high level with nonsense equipment.
Yeah.
You can't do that in golf.
No, you
There's levels to it, and we probably have a few superstars who just never decided to play golf. And that's the sad reality of it. You have this issue where does the person have enough talent? Do they have the financial support and structures around them? And then when you have both, then you create stories like James Kamte had in periods of his golfing career, where you have the talent of Papua Sugulam, who was able to overcome what he was able to overcome. Tiger as well, who had this insane talent, but also had some financial backing and became the greatest golfer who's ever lived. And it's those stories are a culmination of all these aspects put together.
Yeah, and I think you bring I think the most important point is access. It's like you have these stories, like for instance the Corder family. So it's like, okay, The father won a tennis major, the Australian Open. And then you have Jessica and Nelly, who are obviously two of the, they're in the top 10, I think, in the world in the women's game. And you have the brother who's now playing Grand Slams. And the question comes to, oh no, it's a great sporting family. Sure, there's a lot of talent there, but it comes down to they have access to these sports. They could be picking up clubs at 4 years old, 3 years old. They could be picking up clubs and going for little lessons when they're 6. So it's like, yes, talent is a massive thing, but you can only realize talent with access to the sport. It's
Absolutely.
it's the only way to kind of get that ball rolling in terms of development. And I think I speak on my behalf. I mean, there's times where you're at golf clubs, and these are golf clubs of all kind of income brackets, if you want to put it that way, in terms of status. As a person of color, you feel this uneasiness, and it's difficult to explain it to some. And when you explain it to, for instance, a white person, they don't quite understand what you're saying, because they'll never understand. But for yourself, I mean, now you've also entered the professional game. You're part of this elite 1% of golfers. Do you think golf communities need to take a look within the community itself and see how best to open up, you mentioned the boundaries, and open up these gates for people of color to feel a bit more welcome and comfortable in these environments, and that can only help the actual golf community as a whole?
Absolutely. I think as a whole, if you were to look at the data or the information around people of color in South Africa, the number of social golfers has increased exponentially.
Yeah.
And that's a very positive thing. And I think it's, if you go to clubs like CCJ, for instance, I have no affiliation with any golf club at the moment, so I could say what I need to say about. There's a big drive towards having these black players involved.
Yeah.
And it's very clear when you enter the club that it's slightly more welcoming than it used to be. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think we are at a stage in golf where everyone needs to be welcome. Women need to be more welcome at golf courses. People of color need to be more welcome at golf courses. And from where it was, a lot has changed, and there's still going to be a lot that does change going forward.
And we talk about this because I feel like golf it's been a slow moving train towards this inclusion and diversity. Why do you think it's the slow progress with golf? Do you think if you look at, for instance, even with the Black Lives Matter movement that was taken, that basically impacted the entire world and sports in general as well. Golf was one of the more silent sports. There were only a few players that really spoke out on it, and I think you can literally count them on one hand that actually mentioned that in interviews or social media or anything like that. Why do you think there's this it's almost like there's a fear in talking about diversity and the realities that lie within the game?
Absolutely. And I think it's as simple as the fact that most businesses involved with golf are predominantly run or execute their sponsorship programs are not executed by people of color. They're generally executed by white people, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that as professional golfers, we all know that that's the case. It's not something that we need to talk about, but by pushing those boundaries and pushing those narratives, you exclude yourself from those financial benefits that could potentially be there. I'm extremely lucky to have Dr. Kinesh Patha and National on board. I spoke to them before we started this interview and just had a discussion about it. And I don't know if there's that many sponsors who are willing to let their athletes talk about this type of stuff. And yeah, I mean, there are positives. If you look at someone like Cameron Champ, who is able to push those narratives and push those agendas. Even someone like Tony Finau, who's a person of color, he's not necessarily black, but
Yeah.
he has kind of been lumped into this person of color black situation. And it's interesting to see how they try to build these narratives, and Cameron Champ has been able to uplift people in his community, which is the most important thing at the end of the day. Even Harold Varner the third, and I think there are avenues by which you can do this and make a positive impact too. It's not only about talking about these terrible, awful topics. It's about celebrating the diversity and inclusion that is available in professional golf.
Yeah, I don't know if can you recall how you got into the game? Was there somewhere that you'd go and practice at a young age, or where was that, and how did you get in? Obviously, your family, and often you have family that plays that massive role. What was it for you?
So my dad would take me to. I played basically whatever sports my dad played. So
Yeah.
I played a lot of cricket, a lot of tennis, and a lot of golf. Those are the three sports I mainly played. And he took me to practice at World of Golf. World of Golf was the place where I grew
Yeah.
up playing golf. And it's such a simple thing. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. I have no idea that it cost him $150 every single time we go to World of Golf. But that's where my love for golf blossomed. I was able to practice as much as I want to. I didn't have to have someone hit tennis balls to me or bowl a cricket ball at me. I could just
Yeah.
practice the whole day. You could drop me off in the morning and I'd be there the whole day and enjoy myself. And my mates would be there because they also had $150 to pay to get in. I think it's such a small thing, but that little boundary to access is there. And when you have money, you don't even think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with in my case, and this is why Soweto Country Club is so close to me, is because I started off playing at well, then it was called Pimville, and in Lens where I grew up, there was this driving range that was next to a train line, and just thinking about it now, if it weren't for those facilities, I probably wouldn't have gotten into the game at that stage. It may have come at a later stage, maybe once I started working for a corporate and there's golf days and you're like, oh, this is golf, which is the case now for most people of color now getting into the game. It's because of the corporate value as well. They're like, oh, you get invited to these opportunities and now you have to turn them down because you don't play golf. So
Exactly.
That's that big spike you mentioned of people of color playing golf. There's a lot of young businessmen our age who are now seeing the value in also being a part of this community. But it was 20 rand for a round of golf at Pimville. 20 rand. We used to pay the car guard more to look after the car than to play. And I think it comes to firstly, City of Joburg have done a great job with finessing that facility, and I think along with the Sunshine Tour as well. What's your take on potentially seeing? I mean, the women have the Joburg Open there on a regular every year basis, but do you think we should probably see a Sunshine Tour event there at some point, even if it's a different format, a bit more fun along a points perspective, because it may not be the championship course, in terms of length, but it could present itself in another way.
Absolutely. So we played. There was a Big Easy that was hosted there, the very first Big Easy that was hosted there, and it was very important for me to play that event. I made a specific point of playing it because that golf course is where we are going to produce maybe not the highest performing golfer in South Africa, but the person with the biggest success story in golf. Coming from that area, being able to play professional golf and being able to provide for a family is a massive success story in itself, and I really enjoy the golf course. I think it's a fantastic little track. We played it in summer, just before it was for the Pro-Am for the South African Open. We played the Pro-Am at Soweto Country Club. And it was awesome. It was in fantastic condition, and it was just a lot of fun to be able to play out there. And they've done, I mean, Bongi Mokaba and her team have just done phenomenal stuff out there. And, I have a lot of respect for her and everything she's done for the game, as well as everyone involved from the Sunshine Tour perspective.
And, moving forward, what do you think, if you could, let's say you had the control arms for the golfing community, what are some of the stuff you'd like to see implemented in, whether it be a golf club or, just in general, what do you think is the way forward in terms of kind of moving the needle on, diversity or inclusion?
So I had a really interesting conversation with my sponsor about this question because, it's very meaningful, and you need to be able to do something meaningful with whatever control you have, And this is my little piece of advice I can give to whoever's in charge, And for me, I look at all these different programs, initiatives in place. You have SAGDB and the fantastic work that they're doing, Johan Rupert and Leopard Creek, and being able to allow those kids to practice out there. You have Ernie Els and his foundation, which was, I don't know if it's still associated with Fancourt, but Ernie Els and Fancourt Foundation. And, what I would really love to see, even Louis Oosthuizen in his program, what I'd really love to see is slightly more pooling of those resources to actually have a streamlined path towards developing kids. Sometimes it feels like it's a little bit scatterbrained. I don't know the ins and outs. I'm just saying from my outside perspective.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. It feels like if we could pool all the resources together and make one cohesive unit of development in South Africa, which, it's not easy to do, but I feel like there's a stronger direction that we can take some of these programs.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when you look at, for instance, women, when they talk about equality and women's programs in all facets, whether it be sports or in the workplace, you often find a man is at the forefront of these decisions. And I think in some cases with, these diversity programs and things like that in the development side, only having, for instance, white people at the forefront of these programs is also a handicap in a sense, because you need someone there with the first-hand experience and the first-hand kind of like you mentioned, you need to feel that relation to the problem to fully grasp what needs to be done. And I think from my perspective, if you can start including these, people of color in these decisions and in the building of these programs, you'll see a lot more fruit to be bared from these programs.
Absolutely. And I think it's an interesting discussion because, us as Indian men, we also have a role to play in this because of our proximity to these power structures.
Yes.
We are slightly closer to these power structures, and we can make a difference in our communication. It's not as easy for someone, a black individual, African black individual from Soweto, to be able to raise these points because they have no audience with that group of people. And I think even again putting an Indian person in charge of that, does that send the right, is the optics correct on that? Is it not? How do you do this so that everybody involved feels that buy-in, feels invested? And you need white investors in these programs.
Yeah.
That's one of the most important parts of it. So there's no point alienating those people. They need to feel just as strongly about it as you and I feel. And it's not an easy, there's so much give and take, and there's so many balancing acts in it. But at the end of the day, everybody wants transformation to take place. Everybody wants to have those development stories and those success stories happen. It's just how do you do it in a way where everyone feels that buy-in,
Yeah, I think, and that's where, that cohesiveness, I think that you brought up earlier is where the best way forward, trying to pull, everyone pulling in the same direction, and not to kind of separate various organizations and that kind of thing. And I think, with golf being such an individual sport, maybe that's sometimes why we find ourselves often questioning, when there's a collective outcome that needs to be found, we often find ourselves scratching our head thinking why. But I think, the nature of the game is such an individual, sport, that sometimes the decisions are also individual in the mindset. But I think, slowly and surely we are moving towards that narrative of, transformation. No matter how we get there, that's the most important thing.
Absolutely, and it's that's why golf is such a tricky sport to implement all these transformation and development programs, because at the end of the day, so I'm involved with I'm on the players committee and on the transformation committee on the Sunshine Tour, because it's something that's very important to me, and at the thing is that with golf, our entire system is based around merit, based around performance, and based around merit. So who really from our transformation committee discussions, who really needs that extra money? Is it the players who are making the most money? Is it the players who are making the least money? Is it someone in between? Who needs that extra little jolt of cash to be able to push their game to the next level? And that's a difficult one to say, because most people would say surely it should go to the people who are playing the best. Well, is that extra little bit of money, is it going to make a difference to them? I don't know, and these are the things I sit and grapple with a lot, because you need, at the end of the day, what do you want out of transformation? That's always the question I come back to. Is, do you want 2 or 3 superstars who are able to take their games to Europe, able to push themselves onto a level that can inspire youngsters coming forward? Or do you want a bigger group of players playing on the Sunshine Tour at a good level? And there's no right or wrong answer, but you need to come up with an answer to that before you can push forward any discussions,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's that clarity, that intention. Intention is always key in every action. And I think, with everything, if you have a clear outset and the intention of what the outcome needs to be, it's much easier to execute. And I think that point of what do you want out of it is massive. And it's interesting. And I think, with me working, for instance, I've done a lot of work on the Sunshine Ladies Tour. I find myself so closely relating to their struggle of, it's a close relation between, POC and women, because there is that struggle for, and it's not one in the same, but there is that in the game of golf where you're kind of fighting for a bit of attention and a bit of funding, from that perspective. And I think that's why I found myself kind of relating to that tour so much, is because those are things that we thought about at one stage as well.
Absolutely. And I think I'm not as familiar with all the ins and outs of what happens on the ladies tour, but it seems like there's been a drive towards having more events, putting more prize money in place. It feels like things are happening in a meaningful way on that tour. I don't know enough about it, but that's what it feels like. And having the conversations with other ladies professionals, it feels like there's really something to play for now, versus sometimes there really wasn't anything to play for in South Africa at all.
Yeah, so with Investec, I think they've made massive, inroads with growing the ladies tour. For instance, having all 4 days, all 4 days of the women's SA Women's Open televised is massive. That's one way of growing the game, and that's where you see that there is this hunger to see local women's golf. I mean, we hardly see even the European golf here, let alone local golf. So. I think Investec has done great work. They obviously have the intention of growing the game, and I think it takes someone like Investec to bring the other sponsors in, and I think slowly we are seeing that kind of build out in a big way.
Absolutely, and you saw a similar thing on the Sunshine Tour with the Gary Player class, and having those sponsors involved. Obviously, the timing of the pandemic just was just obviously for a lot of people it was terrible, but
Yeah.
for our transformation class in particular, it was as well, because our the contract ended in March of 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right at the time when everything kind of went crazy. So yeah, but I feel very confident that as we have more and more success stories in our transformation group, as the likes of Keenan Davidson and Toto Timba continue to push forward, and hopefully myself, hopefully I can play some decent golf, can can continue to attract those sponsors, not only for ourselves but for the entire group as a whole.
Yeah. And I think, that's the way forward is to see the bigger pictures, these programs and these initiatives might not impact our immediate group as much, but the intention should be for the future to benefit as much from it, and so we see a bigger group come through in the near future. So I think, with that in mind, that's the way. It's good to see short-term success as well. Don't get me wrong, that builds for better investment and so on. But it comes back to intention. You want to kind of have this as a long-standing channel to grow golf in every way.
Absolutely, and that's why I've tried to work as closely as I can with Thomas App, Selwyn Nathan, and Ludwig Manyama, and try and put my input into this as much as I can. I'm just one person of many who are working really hard on this.
Yeah.
And I think you can. I really believe that the Sunshine Tour does a pretty good job with transformation. Compared to some of the structures underneath, which don't really care that much about transformation. You can see a real clear drive. For me, the only reason I played in the Dunhill in my first year on tour is because I earned one of those playoff color spots.
Yeah.
And having done that, I finished in the top 25 in the event, and it's changed the entire path of my career. It was the first of many good events, but it was the first one.
Exactly.
And to be able to have those opportunities is the most important thing, and hopefully moving forward we'll be able to see those opportunities pushed even further with these coming Challenge Tour and European Tour co-sanctioned events coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, they have done a great job, and I think that we're starting to see a bit of that come out in the order of merit, with yourself, Toto, Keenan, and I think slowly we'll see that group grow, and the results will improve in due time. But with that, Dol, what's up for you in the next few weeks? I know we've got a busy schedule coming up. Can you take us through a bit of what's planned for you?
So we've got the next event at Wingate Park. I believe it's the Times Square event at Wingate Park, which is just a fantastic golf course and so much fun to play. And then following that, it is Sishen, the event at out in Katu. Probably going to play that. It's always an interesting event with some different strategies off the tee, and
Yeah.
it's a fun golf course. And then after that, I'm probably going to be heading to Europe, hopefully to play in a Challenge Tour event. And then after that, I'm playing Corn Ferry Q School, so out in the US.
Nice.
I'll be there from kind of the middle of September, and get my card on the Corn Ferry Tour. That's the plan. I'm going to go through all three stages, and like my buddy Garrick Hugo did on the European Tour, I'm planning to do that on the Corn Ferry Tour.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, when you see fellow players that you've competed against at the amateur level and professional level succeed at that level. Does that just give you that extra bit of push as well?
You have no idea. You have no idea. I mean, I know Garrick very, very well, and to be able to I messaged him just before the after the third round on that PGA Tour event when he won. And I just had this weird feeling. I knew he was going to get it done. But yeah, to know someone like that and be able to say, hey, you've gone from being a good player, you won a European Tour event, a smaller one, to being in the top 50 in the world, and what happened? What made you this better player all of a sudden? You know,
Yeah,
and he's a great dude, and he gives you all the time in the world if you know him well enough. And I appreciate guys like that. You know, I've like Yuvan Rabula playing in the Masters. I've had a teammate of mine playing the Masters who's won on the Latin American tour as well. So you know, knowing these guys, knowing that yes, golf is defined by the fine margins, and yeah, they are really good players, but I am just as good as those guys. You know.
100%. And with that, Dole, thanks for your time, your input. I think this is important conversations that need to happen on a more regular basis, and not with the fear of what the outcome may be. I think like we've mentioned plenty times on this in this chat, your intention is key. As long as the intention is there, you don't have to be fearful in any way.
No, yeah, we as long as we communicate clearly and as long as everyone wants the best for diversity and inclusion, which I mean, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't. Um, and I just think that there's good discussion and meaningful discussion to be had. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on.